All right, this question is asking you to decide which one of the pairs of atoms is more electronegative than the other one. And so what we want to do is we want to think about our periodic trend that is electronegativity. And so we want to consider that electronegativity increases this way, and it increases this way along the periodic table, with fluorine being the most electronegative atoms, and then followed by by oxygen and nitrogen. So these are the three most electronegative atoms on the periodic table, fluorine being the most electronegative atom. So the general trend is this way. And so this is what we want to know when we want to do these particular comparisons. The only other thing is hydrogen. So we have to think about hydrogen when it's versus a non-metal, and hydrogen when it's versus a metal. So when hydrogen is versus a non-metal, the non-metal is more electronegative, but hydrogen is more electronegative than metals. And so that's the only other thing you really need to think about. Okay, so then what does that mean? Well, we know our periodic trend. So carbon is not as electronegative as nitrogen. Carbon is to the left of nitrogen, so it's less electronegative. Again, oxygen is more electronegative than nitrogen because oxygen is to the right of nitrogen. Fluorine is more electronegative than that. Fluorine is the most electronegative atom. Here's an example of your hydrogen versus a non-metal. Carbon is a non-metal, so it is more electronegative. Carbon versus silicon. Carbon is in a period that is higher, relatively speaking, on the periodic table than silicon. So in other words, we would say carbon is above silicon on the periodic table. So carbon is more electronegative. Phosphorus and chlorine. Chlorine is to the right of phosphorus, so it's more electronegative. Bromine versus iodine. Bromine and iodine are right in the same group, but bromine is higher along the periodic table, so it is more electronegative than iodine. And here we have an example of hydrogen versus molybdenum. Molybdenum is a metal, and so hydrogen is more electronegative. And now we have magnesium versus boron. Boron is higher and also further to the right than magnesium, and so we'd say boron is more electronegative. Okay, that's all there is to this one.